There is a moment in almost every home, quiet, ordinary, deceptively simple, that reveals the deeper psychology of childhood. A parent gives a gentle instruction. The child hears it, and nothing happens, not because they cannot do it, not because they refuse to do it, but because their brain has learned a different rhythm, a different pattern, a different expectation of when to act. The truth behind kids who ignore instructions is not rooted in defiance, genetics, weakness, or personality. It is rooted in the invisible training that happens every single day, often without parents even realizing they are teaching it. And once you understand the psychology underneath this pattern, it becomes impossible to see children's behavior the same way again. Imagine a 5-year-old named Ayan standing in the doorway before school. His shoes are untied, lunchbox forgotten, backpack half-zipped. His parent calls out, "Please put on your shoes." Ayan looks, pauses, and then drifts into his own world. 2 minutes pass. Another reminder, still nothing. A third reminder, maybe a louder tone, maybe a warning. And suddenly, as if awakened from deep sleep, he moves, fast, panicked, compliant. To the parent, this feels like success. But to the child, something far more complex has happened. His brain has learned that an instruction is not a cue for action. Emotional intensity is. This is the hidden pattern in so many households. Children respond to escalation because escalation is the moment the parent becomes truly predictable. If a parent only becomes highly focused, highly structured, or highly involved when they are stressed or loud, the child's brain learns that calm words are optional while raised voices create urgency. And with repetition, a child builds a neurological association. I act when the parent escalates, not before, not on my own, only then. This process is subtle. It begins in infancy with soothing tones and sharp contrasts in adult behavior, but it becomes deeply embedded in early childhood when routines are irregular, instructions are repeated too many times, and parental regulation fluctuates with daily stress. When the parent's emotional state becomes the child's behavioral trigger, self-regulation never gets the chance to develop. The child begins to rely on the parent's rising intensity to shift their internal state. They are not ignoring instructions to manipulate. They are ignoring them because their brain has learned that nothing meaningful happens until the parent becomes emotional. Parents interpret this as stubbornness. In reality, it is learned dependency. And this raises a profound question. Why does a Japanese 6-year-old walking through crowded streets alone appear more regulated than a Western 5-year-old struggling to put on shoes? The answer is not cultural magic or national temperament. It is a single principle, shitsuke, that transforms the very architecture of a developing mind. Shitsuke means teaching the body, but the deeper translation is discipline as internal regulation rather than external control. Western parenting often revolves around managing behavior. Japanese parenting revolves around strengthening autonomy. The difference begins with routines. In many homes, mornings are a sequence of adult-led instructions. Brush your teeth, get dressed, eat breakfast, put on your shoes. Each step requires parental involvement, but in homes that follow shitsuke, the routine itself becomes the teacher. Children follow predictable sequences until they become automatic pathways in the brain. Neuroscience calls this procedural memory, a powerful system that allows behaviors to become effortless habits. The key is consistency without constant verbal direction. Children do not wait for reminders because the structure, not the parent, guides them. When a child repeatedly experiences a pattern, wake up, dress, wash, eat, prepare, the brain learns to anticipate the next step. That anticipation is the root of self-discipline. A child who anticipates does not wait. A child who remembers does not rely on external pressure. But routines are only one part of the internal discipline puzzle. The second pillar of shitsuke is responsibility, a concept Western parenting often misunderstands. Many parents give children chores but pair them with rewards, threats, or guilt. The child does not work for competence. They work for outcome. Japanese children, by contrast, are given real, meaningful responsibilities as contributions to a community. They serve lunch in their schools. They clean their classrooms. They set up materials and organize supplies, not because they are being disciplined, but because they matter. Their participation is seen as evidence of maturity, not a task tied to punishment or praise. Responsibility builds competence, and competence builds self-esteem. When a child believes they are capable, they rise to the level of capability. When a child feels useful, their behavior aligns with usefulness. The result is a quiet but powerful transformation. They begin regulating themselves not because an adult demands it, but because they see themselves as someone who can. The third pillar is perhaps the most difficult for modern parents: modeled calm. Emotional states are deeply contagious. A child's nervous system mirrors the regulation of the adult who cares for them. When a parent moves calmly, speaks softly, and responds intentionally, the child's nervous system settles. They act from groundedness rather than avoidance or panic. But when the adult is rushed, frustrated, or reactive, the child's brain shifts into survival mode. Instructions become noise rather than guidance. This is why yelling never builds discipline. It builds compliance, but compliance driven by stress shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning, memory, and self-regulation. A child who obeys under pressure is not learning discipline. They are learning how to manage the parent's emotions instead of their own. And then there is the fourth pillar, memoru, watchful waiting. This is the practice of giving a child space to recognize, reflect, and solve problems without immediate adult correction. In many Western homes, parents intervene quickly. A forgotten item is retrieved, a mistake is corrected, an argument is mediated. The intention is love, but the outcome is dependence. When a child is not allowed to feel discomfort, they never build resilience. When they are not given space to think, they never develop initiative. Memoru is based on trust. Trust that the child can struggle. Trust that the child can problem solve. Trust that the child can learn from natural consequences without shame or lecture. When a child forgets a pencil and the teacher waits silently, the child activates executive function, recognition, planning, communication, self-correction. These are the exact functions that are suppressed when the adult rescues too quickly. And so the question becomes, how can parents apply these principles at home without adopting an entire culture? The path is simpler than it seems. It begins by removing the constant flow of instructions and replacing them with predictable routines. A visual chart for mornings: wake up, wash, dress, eat, prepare, transfers responsibility from the parent's voice to the child's memory. The moment the parent stops repeating, the child's brain starts remembering. The parent becomes a guide, not a task manager. Next comes the shift from commands to ownership questions. Instead of directing a child to put on their shoes, the parent asks, "What's the next part of your morning routine?" This turns an external prompt into internal thinking. The child must retrieve the information, not react to the parent. Quiet modeling becomes the backbone of discipline. Children are drawn to imitation far more than direction. When a parent begins tidying silently, the child's mirror neurons activate. They join because humans are wired for synchrony, not because they're responding to authority. Micro-responsibilities build competence quickly, not grand tasks, but small, reliable contributions: feeding a pet, sorting laundry, wiping a table, carrying napkins, organizing their shelf. Over time, these tasks accumulate into identity. The child begins to see themselves as someone who contributes, someone who notices needs, someone who acts. But perhaps the most transformative step is parental regulation. Before correcting a child, the parent pauses, breathes, evaluates their emotional state. Children do not fear calm correction. They listen to it, they absorb it, they model it. A parent who leads from calm teaches their child that emotions are manageable, predictable, and safe. Many parents worry this approach works only for compliant children, not for strong-willed ones. But research consistently demonstrates that strong-willed children resist control, not discipline. They resist pressure, not structure. They resist commands, not responsibilities. When these children are offered independence, ownership, routine, and calm leadership, their nervous systems settle. They stop pushing back because there is nothing to push against. They begin to grow forward. Because discipline is not something a child does for a parent, it is something a child gains for themselves. Discipline is not enforced, it is cultivated. And when children develop internal regulation, they act not because someone is watching, but because they feel anchored, capable, and confident within their own bodies. This is the truth behind kids who ignore instructions. They are not ignoring you. Their brains are waiting for a different cue. the cue you've taught them to expect. When you shift that cue from escalation to structure, from stress to routine, from control to autonomy, you transform the way your child's mind learns to act. You teach them not just to listen. You teach them to lead themselves.